Hi, welcome to the discussion on software design, which is one of the key topics in software engineering as well as any kind of a design that we do. So, let's begin with the design stages. First up, design is the process to work out with the architecture. It means that the architecture articulation depends on running down the design process. It is the architecture which is not implementation specific, but the design should comment about the implementation. Now, the first step in this is problem understanding, that is, taking up the requirements and transferring into design requirements, identifying one or more solutions, that is, evaluating possible solutions. That is, one particular architecture that represents the structure of the system into a particular group of elements, which can be classes, components, or modules as you structure the system. And this would depend on the designer's experience and the available resources. So, dominatingly, the architectures, if they are being devised, multiple designs can be created from a single architecture. So this indicates one-to-many relationship between architecture and design. So we can work around with the solution abstractions also. So to depict the design, we can use descriptive notations, and descriptive notations follows a particular modeling language, just like UML. For example, you can consider UML is a general purpose modeling language that creates class diagram for having the logical structure of the system, and you can have the physical as well as the runtime architecture expressed in terms of component or deployment diagram. So each of the abstraction is repeated a number of times. It means that design is an iterative process. The aim is deriving a solution which satisfies the software requirements. It means that there is a migration of software requirements into system analysis first, and then you do the system design. So there are variety of levels. We begin at the highest level, that is the architectural design, that is identifying the subsystems, abstract specifications that will devise the specific subsystems, interface design, which describes the subsystem interfaces, component design. Again, a component is the smallest piece of software which is found to be functional, tested, and verified. Now we move on to the data and algorithmic design, that is the data structure usage and algorithm incorporation, which are the last activities to yield a component. So therefore, we begin with the architecture, and typically we end up with the components, and internally the components can have the data structures and algorithm design. Now, you may ask one thing that what is the role of algorithm here? So, algorithm, it is being dictating the problem area. It is required to be transferred into program design language constructs, so that the program design language constructs can be taken further up to the source code or any programming language construct. So therefore, from that you can create software binaries which may be beneficial for everybody. So now, design is a bridge between the customer and developers. Now, developers, some of the times they are being called as implementers of the solution. So therefore, the problem, if it is a situation, condition, or event that is required to be addressed at a particular event of time, so the design also is something that has been required to be done in time. So the cost for design one cannot neglect, because we have to see the past of design. One cannot say that design is guilty, that's why our solution went wrong. So the background for the design is the requirements, is the domain engineering tasks, the system analysis, That is what the system is expected to do, must is required to be addressed with the development scenario. Now, what that is conceptual design is been migrated by the designers into how that is the technical design. So the general purpose specifications are being written here for design, general purpose. Now the specific purpose transfers can be the implementations, right, for the platforms. Going next, we see the background. We can have the behavioral elements, we can have the flow oriented elements, we can have scenario based elements and class based elements. So the design model at the lowest level will have the data and class design, and then it will have the architectural design, and then the interface design, and the last terminating factor is the component level design. Once we have reached to the component level design, we only have to do the data design and the algorithm design, that is within the component level design specifications. So without any design specifications, a system cannot be implemented. Without an architecture, there can't be a system that can stand on its feet. So with this basis, we can have the two levels of design. One is the architectural design, which is also called as high level design, and detailed design, which is known as low level design. Now let us see. We know that we have to migrate from architectural design to the lowest level, that is the leaf node, that is component design, that is architecture, that is covering overall structure, main modules. Now here we have to understand the nomenclature of modules. The modules are made up of components. So there is no other definition that we will use, because mainly from action oriented paradigm there is a shift into object orientedness, and there are multiple languages which supports this kind of cases. So the architectural design is covering the main use cases of the system. It means that the goal level issues are being addressed by the architectural design. It addresses main non-functional requirements. So the capabilities and abilities, just like portability, interoperability, scalability, efficiency, some of the non-functional requirements are existing at runtime level, some of them are existing at non-runtime. All these issues are being addressed by architectural design, that is to discover the architecture, that is the skeleton of the system. Now the difficulty here is it is hard to change once it has been devised. You cannot make great changes, otherwise the total architecture design will collapse. Now detailed design, which speaks about the inner structure. Now this inner structure mainly focuses on algorithms and the data design. So we have to take up the programming language also into considerations, and then we should look at the detailed enough kind of an implementation into programming language. Here we do not mean the detailed enough means just replicating and duplicating the code. This means that we have to engage into sufficient source code development which is well documented, so that there could be version control that can be applied, backtracking can be also applied, forward traceability could be also there, and the test cases would depend on these scenarios. Likewise, scripting is one of the examples that one might use as a tester to work out than going into detailed programming language constructs. One may narrate short scripts, or otherwise they can insert the breakpoints, or otherwise there could be checkpoints that can be worked out. Now the design trade-offs cannot be neglected here. That is functionality versus usability of the system, cost versus robustness. Now this is a very difficult property to reach out. Like robustness is speaking about the recovery of the system from failure-like condition. Now this failure-like condition is the recovery pattern of the system. So how much cost is being indulged in this, okay, while devising the design? If it is not there in the design, direct kind of an implementation of this is hope so dangerous. Efficiency versus portability on a single kind of an terminal utilization versus multiple machines utilization, the distributions of services, the combination and composition of the services at variety of layers and variety of tiers one has to consider. Now, rapid development versus the functionality. Whether there is a pressure of delivery here, what is so? And if yes, why so? Cost versus reusability. If you are working around with the assets, these assets has to be worked out within the campuses, isn't it? That is common off the shelf components. If you can devise that is reusable, then it will be a cost effective solution. That is because next time when you will be doing it, you will be having handy components altogether that are pluggable, that can be interfaced with each other and reducing the cost. Backward compatibility, it has been commented already, versus reliability. So the design framework, okay, is the gathering on the user requirements, analyzing the requirements data, conceiving the high level design, refining and documenting the design. That is the one phase, that is on the right hand side. Obtain answers to the requirement questions and then validate design against the requirement. So we were start up with the initial requirements and we end up with the completed design. Remember here that our migration is from high level design to low level design, that is architectural design to the procedure oriented design. Now the problem can be considered here, that is the problem is in condition, situation or event that is required to be addressed within certain time spec. The requirements to design, to implementation, to unit test. Okay, so let us go bottom up in case of integration testing. Acceptance testing, they are being based around on the requirements. System tests will happen only if all the elements are bound together. Integration tests, subsystem level you might integrate, and unit test is about the components. So from component you begin the testing, and then slowly towards the end you reach out to acceptance, and lastly you deliver the system into the user's hand for having the user level testing. So one may use divide and conquer, which is an old technique, that is decomposition, or otherwise partitioning the system, although divide and conquer and partitioning are two different approaches altogether. Now design cycle, this is again one of the things that we cannot negate, that is starting up with the requirement definition, working out with system specification, and at the end what we are receiving is the component level design and the module level design. So we have to follow the iterative pattern here. One cannot exit through a single attempt in working around with the design. So system design, how it is been affected, okay, by which factors it has been affected. It has been firstly affected by design goals. Which are the things that you want to look forward in your design? What are the trade-offs? Trade-offs we have already discussed. Okay, one of the difficult most, it has been suggested, there is cost versus robustness, and system decomposition, how we do the decomposition, layers versus partitions. One more thing you can add, that tires analogy, right? So analogies are important here. Cohesion coupling is also one of the significant issues. Concurrency, that is identification of threads. Again, one more difficult challenge, okay, one has to face. Hardware software mapping, data management, that is living with persistence. The global resource handling, that is access control and security. These days this has become a very important issue, okay. That is one of the typical kind of an NFR security, and safety is another kind of an critical. So These two issues, security and safety, are the global issues. Software control, you can have monolithic versus event driven, and the last one, that is how do you initialize and terminate with the system design, and what you are going to do about the failure situation, whether the design is being incorporating fail safe kind of a mode. So now these are the questions which are affecting the architectural design decisions. So uh, let us start with the first question here. Uh, what architecture patterns or styles might be used? If there is previously existing, okay, to name a few, we can you make use of client server, that is two-tier architecture. We may go to three-tier architecture incorporating middlewares or servers, or you may use pipe and filter, blackboard, repository, and so on. And what strategy will be used to control operation of the components, that is the leaf level, how it is being controlled. How will the system be distributed across hardware and the processor cores? Is there any distribution mechanism that has been existing, or whether it is a single installable application that is to be managed on a single end? Is there a generic application architecture? Now this is a guideline, we can take it, that is having a template for the system that can be designed. What will be the fundamental approach used to structure the system? That is, whether it is the layers, partitions, tiles. What about cohesion and coupling, and how you can do the decomposition structures? And what do you do with the non-functional requirements? That is the topmost question. That is dealing with efficiency, portabilities or abilities of the systems. And the last point, okay, which is cannot be forgotten by mistake, by chance, is the documentation. Are we doing the documentation of the architecture? If yes, that is well and good. If no, there is an warning sign, right? This is a dangerous situation. We are not having the documentation. So therefore, this diagram has got the resemblance with the previous diagram of how we migrate from analysis to the design. That is, from the use cases, we take up the goal level storage, we work around with the participations of these goals in terms of classes. So class diagrams do indicate the structure of the system at logical level, then the requirements, and then the designing the class relationship subsystems. And here you can see majority activity diagrams are been coming in. Okay, activity state diagrams, sequence diagrams, they are been coming in. Okay, they are coming in because of the story that if you want to structure the system, you must know the behavior of the system. That is the chain of action and reactions that the system would be doing, that is responding to a particular event which is external to the system. So the 4+1 view, it suggests to you 4+1 view has been recommended by Philip Rushen. The first view is the logical view, which shows the key abstractions in terms of the object classes, that is the class diagram stuff. The next stuff is the development view, which shows the decomposition structure. The physical view, which shows the hardware and software component distributed across the processes. And the last one, which is the most important that I can rate it as, is the process view, which shows how at runtime the system is composed of interacting processes, because this composition will change at runtime, isn't it? That is picking up the right element at the right time. That is picking up the component chain, because the components within themselves, they may have asymmetric flow. So the flow may pass on from component 1 to component 2 to component 3 to 4 to 5, again 2 to 4 to 5. Yes, such like a symmetric flow might exist, and this has to be done at runtime. This should not be done statically. Why so? Because the impact of that will not be clearly identified. Next is the design views scope. Now let us distinctively separate out what is a view and what is a perspective. The views are being mapped with the functional requirements, whereas the perspectives are being mapped up with the non-functional requirements. To repeat again, views are connected with functional requirements, whereas perspectives are connected with the non-functional requirements. So, the design view, decomposition description, dependency description, interface description, and detailed description. That is, if we start off with the topmost element, that is decomposition description, that is partitioning the system into design entities. It is an hierarchical decomposition diagram. You may take the help of class diagrams here to structure the system. Another thing is the dependency description of relationships amongst the entities of the system resources. And then you can take up the help of structured chart. A structured chart is merely an indicator of how the modules are composed of which components and how the modules formulate the subsystems. Interface descriptions, that is the design entities which are interconnecting two components or two units together. Now we are speaking about the software units as well as the hardware units. So we may use interface files and parameter tables for our own consideration. The last part is detailed description, which is description of internal design details of an entity. That is working around with the flowcharts, PDL, etc. before we can migrate to the programming languages that is written for the source code, creating the software binaries. So now, design model elements, data elements are data models, that is data structures, and you may have database architecture. You may have architectural elements, likewise application domain, analysis classes, and patterns and styles, user interfaces, component elements, deployment elements. So this structurization has been already been there with you. Now the design and quality. Now just see to it, the definition of design says that design is a problem solving process. Just see to it, a process means that is set of activities which are being performed to attain specific goals or objectives. By process we mean that it is a set of activities which has been performed to attain specific goals or objectives. Now here we are considering the functional as well as non-functional requirements, and we want good quality as well, but quality is not an direct outcome, it is an indirect outcome, quality. So there are a number of parameters that are being considered. Two of the important measures are there, that is cohesion and coupling, without which design is empty. The design must implement all of the explicit requirements that are being stated by the customer, because the customer will not be satisfied until all the explicit requirements are being mentioned and gathered with the design addressing. The design must be readable and understandable guide. It means that you will not use a nomenclature that only yourself will understand and others won't understand. Design, it indicates the general purpose kind of a document which is there for the development team, and it will be used by the people who will be devising the PDL constructs, then taking the source code and applying the version controls, and subsequently the testing unit will be using the design, isn't it, to have the integration tests done, system tests done, and the user testing done. The design should provide a complete picture of the software. So an incomplete picture or a partial picture will be dangerous in this kind of an situation. So what is been meant by that? First of all, collect the behavioral domains. Next, collect the functional domains. And lastly, work out with the data domains from the implementation perspective. Quality guidelines. Now remember that it is the guideline set, so you can make a choice here, or otherwise you can follow a standard. In case of standard, you don't have any kind of a liberty. In guidelines, they are general purpose. Whether you follow or not, it is your question of discretion. A design should exhibit an architecture. Architecture means what? It is the structural representation of system elements, starting with the highest level element to the lowest level element, organized in certain hierarchy. So an architecture has been created using recognizable architectural styles or patterns. Now what is pattern? Pattern is a general purpose solution offered to a recurring problem. Recurring problem, right? It is composed of components that exhibit good design characteristics and can be implemented in an evolutionary fashion. So evolutionary means that there are two ways. One is the evolutionary and another one is the throwaway. So it is an iterative process. Design is a process, first up. Outcome of a design is articulation of architecture, and one architecture can be implemented in n number of designs where n is finite. The design should be modular, that is logically compartmentalized, logically partitioned into elements or subsystems. A design should contain distinct representations of data architecture interfaces. It should lead to data structures that are appropriate for the classes. So therefore this is the leaf kind of an requirement. So independent functional characteristics, over dependencies should be avoided, and reduce the number of interfaces so that it will not have too much kind of an communication between the components or between the subsystem parts, so that the asymmetric flow of control can be controlled. A design should be derived using iterative method, conforming to SRS. So you cannot say that the design is complete without having adherence to the SRS. And you may use, of course, expressive abilities of the notational catalog provided by a modeling language. Next is there are principles suggested by Davis. They are 30 in number. We are having only a partial list here. A design process should not suffer from tunnel vision. It should show the complete picture. It should be traceable back to the analysis model, because the input for the design model is the analysis model. The input for analysis model is the requirement set. The design should not reinvent the wheel. That is, somebody has implemented the system in this way, so I will do the implementation just in the same way. This doesn't work out. The design should minimize the intellectual distance between software and the problem. So this intellectual distance means the mapping of the real world scenarios to the implementation world. The design should exhibit uniformity and integration. It means that the design should be ready to integrate and it should be uniform. So therefore there has to be balance in the hierarchical structure, and the design should be structured to accommodate change. So any change that is been there, it should first happen into design. Smaller level changes can be done with individual component, very small level. But very high level kind of an changes, your architecture must have room and space, right? Now for that you can take up the master plan of your living room, that how many people can watch the television at the same time. If your living room is designed for only 4 people and if you wish to accommodate 25 people, it will not be the reality, right? Design is not coding and coding is not design. So this is a fake statement which has been used by the coding community, that is coding itself is sufficient and we don't require design. But without design, how you can survive? Even we as an human being cannot survive without the architectural skeleton, okay, and the functional organs. If we are the example of that, how come coding can exist on its own without design? So this is a fake statement which has been populated by coding community, right? This is not a blame on coding team, but this is a promotion that has been held up by coding community. That is, the dead end is coding. After all, you are coming up to us only, isn't it, to code the things? Okay, but code it in the way we want. That is what is the architects are been saying. That is what is the designers are been saying. We don't want a code written very heavily, yeah, without quality, right? So the last point here is that the design should be reviewed to minimize the conceptual or semantic errors. So it should not have the gap between the conceptual stuff and the implementation universe. So design goals, okay, on the left hand side they are the abilities of the systems, right? On the right hand side you can have the usability perspective, that is indicated in the color black. Okay, for example, adaptability, reusability, efficiency, right? They are being runtime non-function requirements, whereas readability of the document, ease of learning, ease of remembering, that is how much load we are being giving to the user to remember that what were being the links, ease of use, whether accommodating design process has increased the productivity or not. Are we able to have good documentation now? Good documentation versus bad documentation versus poor documentation, right? Worst case of good documentation is bad documentation. Okay, than doing bad documentation, one should not go for documentation itself, right? Friendly suggestions for those who dislike the documentation, because if you will not like the documentation, who will do the documentation for you? Alright, somebody else should clear up the garbage, isn't it, on behalf of you. This is not been expected, right? So as the design progresses, the documentation has to be there. As coding progresses, coding styles has to be adopted and relevant documentation has to be done. Now there is a relationship between the end user, client and developer, okay, about the expectations. What they want at the end is the runtime efficiency. Now the other story, that is end user and client, okay, if they want runtime efficiency, the developer and maintainer, they are speaking about portability and good documentation. But what at the end these three circles are being beating is reliability. That is the topmost kind of an NFR, that is non-functional requirement. So the compartmentalization of what we have seen in the previous slide, that is this slide, the regrouping has been done for end user, developer and client. Let us go ahead with the design process. This we have seen. This is once again just look at the outcomes, that is design products, system architecture, software specification, interface specification, and lastly we are having data structure and algorithms, right? So design process, just see to it, design process cannot be reduced to a routine procedure. It will take up the time, but it cannot be a routine procedure. Okay, that today I have designed the system for 5 hours. Now let us think about the design tomorrow. It can't be automated. Okay? You cannot have automatic design generation. Okay, if you give your requirements, there is a tool which generate an automatic design for you. This is not practical, not feasible, not realizable, and it hasn't been implemented yet. Okay, so it is precisely required to be controlled or predicted. Just see to it. Okay, that is also impossible. The design process can be structured. Now let us talk logical, right? The design process can be structured to separate the routine from the creative activities, that is follow the disciplined approach and work out with the deliverables and the process, that is set of activities performed to achieve the design goals, and have multiple representations, that is take the visualization aids, that is take up the structural composition mechanisms, and we need all these three, that is graphics, formality and text. Now formality is something that has been dealing with semantics, right? So to have the reduction of gap between the conceptual and the implementation world, we are having the formality, that is semantics. Now design as a series of decisions. Okay, those who cannot take the decisions, okay, should not design the system. Okay, so this is a leader's job. So one has to search forward for alternative solutions. As I have indicated, that one architecture may result into numerous designs. So it is the designer who makes a design decision, that is choosing the best option out of the all. Let us say one architecture is there that is belonging to one particular architectural style, that is client server for a moment. One is in the requesting mode, another one is the listening and fulfilling mode. So which is the best implementation part, okay, which takes up the technology into consideration and gives finest kind of an outcome, that has to be selected. Now to make each design decisions, the software engineer uses knowledge of the requirements, the design as created so far, the technology that is available, that is you cannot decline from that. Now here you cannot work around with the bleeding edge technology or white elephants, you cannot take into picture here, and work out with best practices that the industry or the de facto standards have come up with the design. 22nd slide is about the design hierarchy, that is work out with the program requirements and work out with the program specifications, operational scenarios and function specifications, then take up the state specification, logic specifications, and work out with the module object specification. The next thing is that how to do these transfers into source code. Not take the module requirements, again devise the MOF, that is module operational and functional specification, then again go forward for detailed and state and logic specification, so that you can read the module source code. So now here we have to take up the help of a diagram which suggests about that a module inherits, can be devised from the components framework we have. A system has been composed of multiple subsystems together, and a system has been implemented in terms of components. So components are smallest unit of software, okay, never forget that. And system, component and module view. Let us speak about system. It's a logical entity. Why logical? Because the physical grouping and realization will depend on the physical architecture and the runtime architecture. So definable responsibilities is the one issue, and subsystem is the part of a larger system. The title itself signifies that. component is a smallest piece of software. Again, hardware is also there, which should have a clear role. Therefore, one component can be designed for reuse, but there should not be duplication amongst the components. Okay, to remember you. So, there exists deviational definitions, okay, for modules as the paradigm shifts. Next is the approaches, top-down and bottom-up design. For top-down design, you take up the highest level structural element and go to the leaf. Bottom-up is take the leaf into consideration and move topward into the system composition. So mix of top-down may be used, that is hybrid kind of a design structure also can be used. So there are the different aspects we have seen. What is new here is the protocol design, that is based on communication. So remember that software should not be monolithic, that is they are required to be composed of multiple and interactive modules. So therefore the goals of the system design is to decode what the modules are, what the modules should be, and how the modules interact with one another. And now modular programming, if it comes, this is a very interesting kind of stuff. That is, in modular programming we often refer to something that is small pieces, that is subroutines. But modularity cannot be just brought up by having subroutines. But modules have to be autonomous, that is independent of each other, coherent and robust, that is fail-safe kind of a situation they are required to address. Now remember that if the modules are not robust, how come the system will be robust? You cannot think about robustness in toto. First think in the smallest kind of an unit and then migrate to the highest unit, right? So it is well suited to certain application domains, right? That is procedural abstraction, right? And less well suited for distributed non-terminating. That is, subroutines are not being followed, okay, for distributed kind of stuff because of limited kind of an analogies presented. So modular decomposability, that is how to decompose the problem into smaller sub-problem and then to have the design categorization, that is modules to components. So you can have top-down design methods here. Module composability, this is the exact reverse of decomposition. That is how we can take up the control mechanism from the bottommost element to the topmost element. Next is the modular understandability. Whether the structure of the modules is interpretable by the architect, interpretable by the designer. Now, who is taking the design decisions? It is the designer. So the designer should ensure that can the component be understood on its own, whether meaningful names are being used or we are having the names as IJKs, just like we are habitual of stating IJKs in for loops. Is the design is well documented, or complex algorithms are being used, or in other way you can think this complex algorithms in making them simple, that whether the complexity is being reduced by incorporating well structured, well organized and efficient algorithms. If not, can there be enhancement to the algorithms? If yes, this minute kind of an addition, deletions or updations can result in a big change, right? So the game changer is there in modular understandability, right? So modular continuity, that is, it is satisfying this criteria, that is how to accommodate the change. Whether the change in one module is propagating to the number of modules. One should try to avoid this, one should try to limit this. Why? Why so? Why one should limit this propagation of change? Because for the stability of the architecture and stability of the design, it is required that there should not be too many changes which are being propagating due to a change. It means that the software architecture and the design is not flexible to accommodate the change. Modular protection comes up with meeting the abnormal conditions, right? It should have only effects on one or two modules. It should not damage the entire system, right? So this is about this integrity of the system. Basically, to deal with modular protection deals with the system's integrity. Next up is what is the trade-off? How we should select? What are the right number of modules for a specific software design? So there are 5 principles that we should take into consideration. Linguistic modular units, few interfaces, not only few interfaces, small interfaces. It means that the interfaces know their job, explicit interfaces, and as far as possible protect the modules with the help of information hiding. So you can shield the data as well as the algorithms, and just the ideal figure that you can select, that is optimal number of modules. If you can select the optimal number of modules, your integration cost will lower down, because the number of modules, if they are been keeping on increasing, it means that the module integration cost as well as the testing effort will be also increased. Now, if the testing effort is being increased, you must know the law that if development cost is X, the maintenance cost is 2X. So just doubling the development cost is the maintenance cost. So now we take up coupling now. That is the first major attribute. That is, coupling means the strength of interconnection. There are 2 linkages. One is inter-component linkages and another one is intra-component linkages. So we see that intra-component, that is within the component, linkages are stronger than inter-component, that is between 2 components, linkages. To repeat again, intra-component linkages are stronger than inter-component linkages. Now there has to be loose coupling. Why loose coupling? Because at runtime you may have to have the mixins of the components as required. So therefore, state decentralization, okay, is our recursive kind of an parameter passing or message passing can be achieved by loose coupling, and just having the sharing of information exchange is not good. It is resulting in tight coupling, right? So, and object class is coupled to its superclass, so therefore hierarchical promotions must be there. A major obstacle is to work out with the cheap quality software. So therefore, here if you see coupling, that is about the interconnection between 2 components or within the components. Obstacles are economical, organizational, or psychological even. Okay, if you are habitual of organizing the system structure in one particular way, then you have to depend around on that way only. That is, if you are fascinated towards C programming language, your mind thinks like C. That is programming pesticide effect, that you can call it as. Tight and loose coupling. Now here you can see that in tight coupling there is a shared data area between A, B, C, D. This is the example of tight coupling. So all these 4 are needing one data area. Whereas loose coupling, here you can see the structuring, module A, module B, module C. Now, therefore, this structure is quite better and obvious than the tight coupling. Now, cohesion, that is another measure. It is a measure of how well a component fits together, or it talks about functional strength of the component. Now, what do we mean by functional strength? That is how one component can handle the responsibility and the services singularly. How it doesn't depend on the rest of the components to do its own work. Now, let us say that now the component is of the type container. So, the component as a container is a module actually. It takes up several components together and present itself as a big or fat service creator kind of a module. Another thing is that it is a coordinator amongst the components or amongst the module, coordinator. So just transferring the controls, having the maintenance of asymmetric flow, you can devise the components like this, okay, or modules like this, right? But cohesions is a property that one cannot negate. That is, it is ideally required that the system or subsystem or a module should have high cohesion and low coupling. But practically, this is infeasible. So there exists a dependency matrix. There exists dependency matrix that requires to be generated and that is required to be worked out with. Now next is, this is the type of cohesion, or shortly it is called as cohesion spectrum. If we have understood the concept of cohesion, that is about the functional strength of the components or the modules, what is our expectation is to have high cohesion, that is single-minded functional cohesion. Coincidental, just see every 60 lines of code that statically the cohesion happens is logical, everything related to output, temporal, all must be executed, that is concurrency is coming over here in picture, procedural, parts related and must be executed in even order, communicational, parts, process area 1, area of a data structure, and sequential, that is input of one component is been existent as an output of the another component. So output to input kind of linkages is been provided here. So cohesion levels, again to have a look at that, weaker forms are coincidental, logical and temporal, and medium forms are communicational and sequential. So functional cohesion and object cohesion, these are been thought of as strong cohesion levels. Okay, so we may strive ideally for doing it, but of course we might end up in sequential cohesion. We may not go forward for devising the components which are having single-mindedness. So we may use a divide and conquer technique, that is divide this subsystem into one or more packages, and the packages is furthermore divided into classes, and the classes is divided into methods. The methods are being interlinked with the mechanisms which may trigger it. Now this is the description about the cohesions in detail. So functional cohesion is the strong cohesion, to remember it. This is achieved when all the code that competes a particular result is kept together and everything else is kept out. So functional cohesion, if you want to achieve, you should have highest level of abstraction. That is, you should have single computation, return a result without having any kind of side effects. The benefits of this is easier to understand, more reusable, easier to replace. So Very large scale benefits are been there. Layer cohesion, all the facilities for providing or accessing a set of related services are kept together. Now here you can formulate a view. You can structure the system into layers. Now the layers can have vertical communication amongst themselves as well as horizontal communication. The ISO OSI model of network layers you can refer here, right? APIs, that is application programming interfaces, do follow such analogies. Now here you can see the example layers, simple kind of and typical layers. Okay, you can have operating system, database, network communication as one layer, application logic next layer, last layer is user interface. So the system, as you move around at the upward, you work around on the levels of abstractions. That is, the things are being hidden when you are moving into top of the orders or top of the rankings of layers. Communicational cohesion, you can manipulate certain data that has been kept together. Now this is an indicator of tight coupling some way, right? Manipulate certain data that has been kept together. Some kind of a tight coupling has been existing. Just see to it that the manipulation has been restricted over here. When the changes are made to the data, you can find all the code in one place. It means that dynamic binding may be the outcome of communicational cohesion. So, the concept of communicational cohesion can be related to multiple disciplines altogether. Sequential, it is just the series, output to input, as we had discussed previously. Procedural cohesion, keeping several procedures together. Temporal cohesions, performed during the same phase of execution of the program. So similarity, okay, it is being targeted. So it is weaker than procedural cohesion. Utility cohesions, okay, just say to it that which cannot be logically placed as a cohesion units. Okay, so just see to it that it has got a wider kind of an applicability to many subsystems. So as far as the cohesion goes, we have to avoid low cohesion and promote high cohesion. Now let us go about coupling. Coupling, the highest kind of a coupling is content coupling, which recommends that everybody can or every component can modify the data units. It has been shared. Too many number of interfaces are been existing there to just single shared data. Now there will be a problem of resource inefficiency, or the resources may become starved by themselves, right? They will not be existing. So coupling, no direct coupling, packages are not related. This can't be the situation. This can't be the situation. You will find that the packages are being related. In data coupling, argument list has been passed. That's okay. Stamp coupling, data structure has been passed as an argument. That's okay. Control is been passed up. That is but legitimate, okay, to have the asymmetric flow of control. External coupling, package tied to an environmental external to the software. That's okay. But common and content coupling, that is use of global data area and content coupling, should be avoided as far as possible. So therefore, too many interfaces, too many communications will lead into failure. So reduce the coupling wherever possible. Just see to it that it depends on the structure that we accommodate. On the left hand side, you can see the mesh like structure. Than that, it is better to have an organized flow of control. Again, that will increase the readability of the modular structure. Now, content coupling has been mentioned that it occurs when one component modifies the data that is internal to another component. So this is a dangerous situation. So, take encapsulating all instances will be the solution. You can declare some of the attributes as private, and the content coupling is the worst form of coupling, right? Worst. Common coupling also it is not been encouraged. Okay, so global variables, system-wide default values can be also been there to use. Control coupling as asymmetric flow happens is okay, calling and called method, they must have the knowledge. That is what is been getting called. So therefore, the messages must be synchronized. The message transportation must be healthy. That's what is the thing that we must look on when we are having the control coupling. Next is the stamp coupling. Occurs whenever one of the application classes is declared as type of a method. So, two ways are there to reduce the stamp coupling. Using an interface as an argument type, let the interface handle the arguments, and passing simple variables. Do not transfer the data structures, right? Transfer just the simple variables. So, complete stuff is not been passed, only partial units are been passed. Data coupling occurs when methods arguments are either primitive or simple library classes. This could be the situation that we may use all the methods that use methods that are passing all the arguments. This can happen. So we have to look on for the trade-off between the data coupling and stamp coupling. Stamp coupling we have seen previously. Routine call coupling occurs when one method in an object-oriented system calls another. That is routine call coupling, and this is about the again asymmetric flow or guided flow. Type use coupling, where a module uses a data type defined in another module, but the permissions can be controlled here. The permission for using such kind of resources can be controlled. Inclusion or import coupling, it is importing certain packages as in Java, or otherwise one component includes another, that is in C++ as the library part. External coupling, environment, because we are being working around with open systems development, open systems engineering, which interact with the environment, we are bound to use external coupling. Design patterns now is a kind of a thing that has been said about, that is, it is a general purpose solution offered to recurring problems. So it has to consider the design process that describes non-functional requirements. Every pattern has its characteristics, that is number of participating classes, their responsibilities and collaborations. The things are very simple here. Okay, responsibilities are the services that the classes can tackle with the internal level functionalities also, which might not be demonstrated. Here we mean by a service that service is a set of functions, functions is the set of operations, and operations they are carried on the data. So that looks like an onion model. So from pattern framework is something different, right? It is not an architectural pattern, but it is a skeleton, just having the plug points. These plug points are called hooks or slots. Now, what is being the purpose of using the hooks or slots is being made to the whole discussion of the designer here or the user who is going to narrate the code, right? So framework, they provide the very high level of libraries or skeletons which can be incorporated. Now just have a look at that. Gamma, who was one of the four authors, has written a gang of four design patterns which are 23 in number and categorized into creational, structural and behavioral patterns. It indicates that design patterns are more abstract than the frameworks. And design patterns are smaller architectural elements than frameworks. And design patterns are less specialized than the frameworks. Now this is from the utility perspective. So if you are speaking about subsystem design, then you have to go for design patterns. If you want something more than that, you have to reach out to frameworks. This marks the end of the session. Thank you very much for listening to me.